Education is changing faster than ever. We can't ignore the research that shows instructional practices rooted in evidence lead to better outcomes for students and stronger school communities. At Educational Innovation 360, we partner with educators and leaders to elevate teaching through personalized instructional coaching, data-driven professional development, and student-centered teaching strategies.
Ed Consulting, we bring deep expertise in strategic planning, organizational transformation, and leadership development, ensuring the whole system is aligned for success, equity, and sustainable improvement.
Together, our goal is simple: to support schools and districts in transforming learning so that every student and educator can flourish. Stay informed, stay innovative, stay student-centered. Subscribe to Educational Innovation 360's YouTube channel to get the latest news and updates.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Johnson of Transform Ed Consulting. It's my pleasure to have as our guest today, Tanzania D. Jones. Tanzania, how are you?
I'm fine, David. How are you?
I'm good, too. Tell everyone where you are in the world.
Okay, I am here in New Orleans, actually the outskirts of New Orleans. And, we just finished up with Mardi Gras, so just kind of like winding down.
Tanzania D. Jones, Master Ed, is the intentional literacy coach in Belle Chase, Louisiana. She is a certified elementary school teacher, reading specialist, and literacy consultant dedicated to strengthening early literacy systems that accelerate student achievement. With over 23 years of experience and a Master of Education degree, her work centers on structured literacy, data-driven instruction, and translating assessment results into clear daily practice. As the founder of the Intentional Literacy Coach, she partners with K-3 teachers and school leaders to align literacy knowledge, strategic planning, and classroom implementation. She is passionate about equipping educators with the clarity and confidence needed to ensure every child becomes a proficient lifelong reader. Tanzania, what led you to become a literacy coach and a literacy expert?
Okay, so I spent the majority of my time in elementary education, particularly second and first grade, and I noticed there was a lot of need there. There's several kids that just were not reading on level or even some at all. And so my goal was to learn as much as I could, which is one of the reasons why I went back to school, on how I knew how to get kids reading, but I couldn't really explain it when someone would ask. And so I went back and I worked on that. So that's my work, that's my passion, just getting kids reading, because reading opens the doors to so many things. And I really want everyone to have the opportunity, whether you like it or not, at least have the opportunity. And you need it for so many things. So that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Now, do you remember how you learned to read?
I do. Actually, and I've been asked this question several times. I have an older sister. And so when she would learn something at school, she would come and she would teach me. So I was actually reading before I even went to school, like in kindergarten, because I would memorize certain things. And I just, she would read things to me. I would read, I'd memorize words. And then I've just always just been interested in books. And so that's how I first learned how to read.
I think back to when I learned to read, and like you, I don't know when it happened. It just seems all of a sudden I was reading. And over the years, I'm not a literacy expert, but over the years, I've read about reading and how kids learn to read. And one of the main points is that it be that the child lives in a literate household where people read. What's your opinion on that, your experience with that?
I find that is definitely an elevation point. If you have that literate household where someone's reading to you, or books are important, they're going over things with you, even if it's not necessarily like the skills, the phonics skills or things like that. The first thing kids learn is phonemic awareness, and that comes from hearing. And so if someone's regularly reading to you or speaking to you, having conversations, that's the first part of learning how to read. So that definitely is a leg up. Now, then you have kids that come and they don't even know how to spell their name. Okay, then that becomes a problem because they don't have that same background. And so you have to spend time kind of like getting them up to that level where you need them to be before you can even teach them the basics of reading. And so that definitely makes a big difference.
I can anticipate now you and I are going to have a very stimulating conversation.
Yes.
Our topic today is titled, Why Good Literacy Instruction Still Fails, the Missing Link Between Training and Classroom Practice. We have 4 bullets here: diagnose real reasons literacy initiatives stall after professional development, examine the disconnect between what teachers know and what happens during instruction, explore practical systems that translate training into daily classroom action, reframe literacy leadership as a responsibility to build clarity, coherence, and accountability. Where would you like to start?
We can actually start from the beginning, just in order the way it is. That's fine.
Well, then how does one diagnose real reasons professional development fails?
Okay, so here's the thing. and everyone who knows anything about the background of reading, there's science of reading. And like some people don't fully understand what that means. So science of reading is basically a body of research that leads to a particular way of reading, how kids learn how to read. And that reading is basically structured literacy. And so many places are getting the professional development, but then not the follow up. And so you can have all of the schools can invest in that training, but the follow up is where it really the transformation lives.
You mean to
Because
follow up with the professional development?
yes,
Okay.
okay, because we can get good professional development and then nothing happens after that, and then what? So some people may put it into practice, others may not, depending on
Hmm.
the person. And in this situation, educators. And so we have to practice, just like with anything else. If I were a football player, I'd practice and practice until I become great at what I'm doing. And so it needs to have that real follow up or that real coaching behind that professional development, or a leader that's experienced with the topic and
Hmm.
knows what to look for, even if they're not experienced, when they're going into those classes and looking at the data. Data is definitely important also.
Well,
And so I feel
Tanzania,
like, yes, go ahead.
years ago, there was a gentleman, I believe his name is Bruce Joyce.
Okay.
He made somewhat of a table, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And the table, the axes on the table is the question, how much do you want teachers to know? And then the other part was how to get them to that place. So to attend a professional development where you have an expert such as you speaking to someone, that's like just step one.
Yes.
If you want to get to the next steps, it's like what you were just describing. You need practice, you need feedback, you need someone to observe, and you need that
Yes.
person to comment and help make in-flight corrections to what the teacher might have learned in professional development. Your
Yes,
thoughts on that?
absolutely. Because for one, just like what you just said, that's the first step. Teachers have to have that actual buy-in, and then they have to want to. What I've been seeing for when working with teachers lately is that it's a compliance thing. Like, okay, I have to get this training, okay, and so what do I do with it afterwards? And they get the training. They might um, implement a few of those things and those changes and getting kids how to read, but then if there's no true follow-up behind that, there's no true coaching, someone helping you to practice, someone modeling for you, you're
Right.
not going to really get the full what you're supposed to get from that professional development. And so I
Now,
think that's yeah.
interestingly, you use the word compliance.
Yes.
That implies that someone is doing something because they must do it.
Because they must do it, and that's exactly what happens sometimes. It's a compliance thing. They do it. I never forget when we first did. I was a literacy coach, and the literacy coaches went first with the science of reading training. And some of us were into it. We were learning, but then when it got to the teachers, it was like, okay, they're asking each other, "What's the answers?" Or like, "How do you do this?" They were just doing it because they had to. It was an initiative where they had to get this training and where they had to have a certain passing score.
Mhm.
And when you go back and ask those teachers what they learned or if they're implementing any of that, the answer is typically no.
So what
They
do you think
haven't
is
really
behind
learned.
that? What is under that where the professional development will make you a better teacher, make you a more effective teacher, and make it uh, more facile, I should say,
Yes.
to improve your students' performance. So what is underneath that it's a matter of compliance?
I think that we got to a point where the literacy data, if you really look at it, and I can go on and on about that, but I'm not. It's showing how even here in 2026, the last time the data was out was 2024, the numbers are dropping, and so it's no reason why in 2026 we should have literacy numbers,
Right.
those reading levels dropping instead of growing, and so it became urgent, and so people, the powers that be are like, okay, we have to get this training. These teachers have to do it. It's not a, right now, it's not a, oh, you do it if you would like to or anything. You have to do it. And so then they created the system, and the system is not working as much. It's kind of broken
Yeah.
because now teachers are only doing it because, oh, now you're making me do this. So let me just get this over with and do it.
Yeah.
And then you have to have that desire. You have to have that want to actually learn it and help the
Mhm.
students, and the knowledge behind it. So if if I'm just being compliant and I do a course, an online course or something, because for most of us that's what it was, just an online course,
Right.
and I just have to do a few little things here and there, there's really no buy-in. Am I
Right.
really getting the knowledge? Now I'm not saying everybody does it, because I got
Right.
a lot from that training,
Right.
but it's for the average teacher that doesn't have time and they're just trying to get it done. They're
Now,
not getting the knowledge.
now let me throw another one at you.
Yes.
Whole language phonics.
Oh my goodness. Look, let me tell you, I was in college when whole language was this big thing, and I knew back then, it's like, nope, that is not going to work completely. There's no way you can, yes, we can memorize certain things, There's some things I told you when I was learning how to read. I memorized a lot of words from my sister helping me. Everybody, the brain is that's why it's called the science of reading, because there was some brain work done, real work on how kids learn how to read. They're about 25%, I think it is, of students. I recently did this in a webinar that can learn regardless. Like they'll learn. It doesn't take any education. You just need that teacher to show them and to guide them. Well, the majority of students don't learn how to read that way. And
Yeah.
so it's like you have to know different processes. You have to know every single thing, all the pillars of reading and everything. So it's like if you don't whole language is like you taking phonics away, it's the like I said, the brain works in a certain way. There's certain processes that are going on in there. They
Well,
have
that's
to
good.
learn the sounds. They have to learn what's called the code to learn how to read. And that comes with phonics and not just whole language.
Okay. All right. Well, we better move on to our next bullet
Yes.
here.
Okay.
Examine the disconnect between what teachers know and what happens during instruction. What is the disconnect?
Okay, so that disconnect, I kind of went into that too a little bit. So like thinking about with the science of reading training, some teachers in their teacher prep, they're not really getting that background knowledge of why the phonics works or why it's phonics versus whole language and how it's, certain things. Yes, you want a structured literacy. You want all components of it. You want knowledge. You want them to be able to have text that they have to work with. Not necessarily everything isn't decodable, but that's what we have, oral reading teachers and things like that. And so that knowledge to practice gap is what I call it, because you have to know what that tier 1 curriculum that you're using looks like, or that tier 1 instruction, should I say, not necessarily curriculum. But then that's what a meat is. That's what a core. The more kids you can reach in your tier 1 instruction, that's better, because then you have less kids that are in your small group instruction or your tier 2 or your tier 3. You should have a completely small amount of kids in that tier 3 instruction, which is more intensive. They need like that practice. They need down to like specific skills. And so that's the difference between that knowledge to practice. Also too, the school needs to have a system. I feel like a system of how we plan different if leaders, thinking about leaders, just if I walk through, what should I see? What should my literacy classroom look like? So that
You mean like in the
system.
case of a principal administrator, or the case
Yes.
of a literacy coach?
Yes. Even a literacy coach. A literacy coach should know what they're looking for when they go in rooms, because they're the coach. What does this educator need help with? But as far as the leaders need to know also what to do. It's like top down. You have to know what this should look like in a classroom.
Now, do you make observation forms that are specific to reading?
Absolutely. I as a coach, I've done specific, like just as far as even the curriculum. I'll take the curriculum, I'll find the literacy components in that, and we'll have a walkthrough tool or just an observation tool. And these are the things we're looking for. This is what we should see in a typical literacy classroom where these kids are actually learning how to read and process what they're reading. So yes.
And I take it then that such an instrument is used to debrief the teacher and perhaps even put together the next learning plan for the teacher.
Absolutely. And that's typically what you use afterwards. Okay, now let's go through the plan. Let's figure out how we're going to work through this, and we're going to get this teacher where they need to be, or at least, just a little bit better each day based off of what this should look like. But everybody has to be on the same page as far as the principal, assistant principal, any coaches or anything, be on the same page. Yes.
I'm sort of going back to the first bullet, to our conversation
Yes.
about what is underlying teachers' attitude or approach to teaching literacy or anything. I'm sure you're familiar with the term passive resistance.
Yes.
I've had teachers tell me directly, all I got to do is outlast this guy or this gal or so on. Have you, what place or what role does that play in the literacy professional development that you present to teachers?
Okay, so pretty much any professional development, you're always going to have maybe like 1 or 2 people that are like, I'm just here. I have to be here. Nope, it wasn't my choice, but I'm here. A lot of times it may be, I've had situations, and I'm going to give a situation of just coaching, where a lot of times veteran teachers feel like, we say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so, but it's broken. So what do we do when it's broken? We need to fix it, right? And so that's what you're trying to get them to understand. Something is broken, otherwise I wouldn't be here. And so what do we need to do to fix it? Small changes. We don't need to make these drastic, excessive changes, because that's another place where there's a disconnect. When you start making drastic changes and then nobody really wants to comply because now you've made this way too hard. And a lot of times it's more of a lack of knowledge, not necessarily wanting to. They just don't know what to do.
Well, you just implied that incremental change might be better than dramatic change.
Absolutely. I feel like, especially when it comes to literacy. it's making those smaller changes, fixing, maybe even if you're working with one group of students at a time, and then start, working with more and more, or maybe working with one teacher at a time. Okay, and then now you're building your capacity, because now that teacher knows what to do, and they can in turn help you help more teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely capacity building. Yes.
Very good. My head is working real hard here, and I'm picturing it. Yeah, very good, very good. Capacity building, because you're getting allies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. And a lot of times sometimes you want to work with that most difficult person. I was able to get one of my difficult people at one time to become an ally. And that made a big difference, because now she's like, oh, well, Ms. Jones showed me this. Let me go show you. And it's like, oh, well, and we're like, oh, well, why don't you present it? And like now it's a whole different thing, because she's presenting it, and she, so it's like more buy-in. Right. I'm like, that was genius.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Well, how about our next bullet? I have another thought, but I'm going to hold it. Okay. I'm going to hold it. Okay. It has to do with training. Yes. But I'll hold it. Our next bullet: explore practical systems that translate training into daily classroom action. What would be an example of daily classroom action?
Okay, so for instance, if I'm doing a professional development, right, and I'm focusing on how to, let's say, for instance, we're on comprehension, and we did a skill based on comprehension. It's like the teacher, okay, this is something you should try. Now, let's actually go in and try this thing. No, I'm not just going to tell you to try something. What does it look like? Let's model it. Okay. Do I need to have most schools and places have a coach, an instructional coach, or someone that's supposed to be more experienced in certain things in certain areas, and so they should be able to model those different skills and then follow up. That's where it lives. The true transformation lives in the follow up. And so I go back, oh, this teacher is doing this now, okay, or the opposite, this teacher is not doing this now, and here's where, how do you expect something to work if you're not even going to try it? It'd be different if you try it and you tried it and tried it again, and it's still, you don't see any difference or impact. Then okay, let's try something else. But you have to actually do it, and it needs to be a coherent system. You need to have a leader that's on board. If you have an instructional coach, or in my situation, like a literacy coach, a leader that's on board. Okay, what do I need to do? How does this work? Here's the system that we have in place. Or you work together to put together a system that will work for everyone. It needs to be coherent.
Mm-hmm. Can we go backward for a moment?
Yes.
Capacity. Now, I spoke about capacity regarding building an ally, but here's something that I've been questioning, not just here for the first time, but in other settings. What is the definition of capacity? What would be other terms that would define capacity?
The capacity. Okay. So for one, you want people who are able, for one, like when you build your capacity within, let's say, a school building, you want more and more people to be experienced in the thing, whatever the thing is that you're trying to do. So in this situation, in literacy, you also want to do like your professional learning communities, so that people are learning together, so that everybody's putting in their input, but then not so much just like a session where we're just talking and throwing things out there or complaining, but real measures that we can put in place and see if this works. Another thing is having the data. If you can show me your data and this is working for you and you can prove it to me, okay, I want to do what you're doing. And so sharing those things, I found that when I was a master teacher, we did a lot of professional learning communities. People would share things. They would bring in student work. This is what worked for this skill. Okay, let me try that or whatever. Or let me come in your room and see what that looks like. So you need to have that community that's willing to learn and grow together. And so that's how you really build the capacity. If you don't have that, then you'll have a disconnect. And that starts down from the leader. The leader needs to set that.
So when you say capacity, are you speaking of individual capacity or the capacity of an entire school building or an entire reading program, let's say?
It needs to be, when I'm talking about it, I'm talking of the capacity of building individuals, but in turn, you want that to be capacity building for the whole building, for this whole system. Not in, like I said, even not necessarily just one school, in that whole system. Like, what should this look like in our school system? What is the data showing? What is working? What's not working? Okay, let's figure something out. So building that from the top down. Leaders need to know about it. I work with so many leaders and principals that just don't even understand like the basic literacy terms. Maybe they work with high school. Maybe they work in, any other area, not necessarily with lower grade literacy. And that's where they really learn how to read. Because we know if they get to third grade and they haven't learned how to read, then now we have more of an issue. Yep. And so you really want to build that system wide. You want that capacity to be throughout the whole system.
Now, in your bullet, you mentioned
Mhm.
or you used the word practical systems. What
Yes.
would be examples of practical systems?
A practical system would be more so something that's I won't say easy, but it doesn't require a whole lot to implement, right? Practical is something that we know it works, and it's not like a whole heavy lift. It's just something that we need to put together. If some people may need some training on it, we have the people that can do that. It's something that's practical. It's something that's you're able to do it. It's not something difficult like, okay, we have this system and you have to change your whole curriculum. You have to change all these things. Then you start developing that overwhelm, which we do a lot with educators, and then nobody wants to do anything because now you've overwhelmed me. And so it needs to be things that we can actually do. And like I said, those small incremental changes first in order to make it practical. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
All right, Tangier, we have one more bullet.
Yes.
Reframe literacy leadership as a responsibility to build clarity, coherence, and accountability. Literacy leadership. Administrators, principals, assistant principals, literacy coaches, master teachers.
All of those.
I knew you'd say that.
All of those. So, like the leadership responsibility, of course, we know we look at the principal most of the time, that person who's the head, the school lead, the head of the school. But a principal has so much they have to do. Most of the time, they have someone that's in charge of literacy. They may have their literacy coach or their literacy interventionist that does, multiple things. They have an ELA person, right? And so, but that principal still needs to know certain aspects of that, right? This is how I expect this to be led. Here's our system. This is your part. This is your part. And then come back to me after you're doing these things. And we need to be meeting about it. We need to make sure everybody knows the data. Nobody's like, okay, come into the data meeting and it's like, wait a minute, what did they even do? What did they even test on? So I think it's important that there's leadership responsibility, especially if it's not working. And it's like, okay, what do I need to do as a leader to help in this situation? Like your literacy blocks, they need to be protected. We shouldn't have, okay, well, this is a school-wide literacy block, but today we're going to have a fire drill. And then tomorrow we're going to do an assembly. So it's not like it needs to be protected. It needs to be something that everyone's focused on. It's important. It's happening. And the conversations are focused around the data and the instruction, and not necessarily, once again, I'm coming back to that word, not just compliance, but how do we really do this and sustain it?
Well, then what's clarity, coherence, and accountability, particularly clarity and coherence?
So clarity is actually understanding what it is that you want, what it is that you're trying, what's that ultimate goal. Like, and most of the time is to get kids to read, right? But then we need to be more detailed. Like, I want this percentage of kids should be reading on level or reading to this level, right? Coherence is when there's a system that we're all working together. It's like set up. Like in my business, I have a coherent framework, right? It's literacy knowledge, it's strategic planning, it's classroom practice. So everything falls in line with those things, and that's that coherence. Okay. And what was the third thing you asked? Like, I was so focused on the clarity and coherence.
Actually, I'm going somewhere else right now.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with the term spiral curriculum.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've heard teachers complain that the previous grade teacher didn't teach this or didn't teach that. And when you say coherence, that was the immediate thought. Now, does your use of the word coherence include that phenomenon?
That actually falls in line too, because technically, really, there is a structured literacy and there is a certain order in the way that certain skills should be presented to kids and how they learn. And it's important that everyone knows that. So like from your pre-K teacher to your kindergarten, first, second, there's an alignment. And so, but then what happens when you feel like somebody maybe dropped the ball? Because I hear it all the time. Well, their first grade teacher didn't teach that, so now I have to do it or whatever. And so that goes with creating this system too. This system, the school system of this is what we're doing. We're making sure everybody's on the same page. There's follow up. Because if we know what happens if there's no follow up, then people aren't really going to do what they need to do. And so somebody's not going to teach what they need to teach or something. And so that's why we need to have that system. Everybody kind of needs to be on the same page or a little close to the same page. One person might be on 3 and the other one's on 4, but you're not on 20 and then 58. So I think that's really important.
Well, Tangier, it's been real fun talking with you. And we've run out of time, so we need to start wrapping things up. We've discussed a lot of different things here. What would be the takeaway or summary that you would like people to have?
So what I really want people to know kind of in closing is that what I do believe is that good literacy instruction is there. Like we have it, we understand, we know what it needs to look like. But it's more so when the systems don't really when they fail and then we don't protect that clarity. So we don't make sure that teachers actually know what it is that they need to know. So when the
Mhm.
training is disconnected from the planning and the feedback and the data and leadership expectations, then there's no clear system, like you said, that coherence word again. So just what I want people to understand is that most educators are in it because what's the number one thing? You want students to learn, right? And so reading reading is the gateway to learning all the other subjects the correct way and the way you want to. And so we have to make sure that we're doing these not initiative driven, not a system driven, but more, and not even by personality, but it needs to be a structure, like what this classroom should look like,
Mhm.
what this literacy instruction should look like. And so that's
Mhm.
what I want people to know. And it also starts with the heart. I definitely want people
Mhm.
to know that you have to have those relationships. Kids and even educators and teachers and adults, they really have more buy-in when they feel like you care.
Yep. Yep.
And so that's definitely what I really want people to know.
And
Everything
what's
else
the
falls in line. Yes.
and what's the call to action? What do you want people to do with all of this knowledge?
What I want people to do is actually get the knowledge for one thing. That, like I said, one of the reasons why I have the intentional literacy coach is because I saw the need. There's so many educators that need me. I still have people call me, and so what I want people to do is get that knowledge. Don't be afraid to ask people around you, people that have more experience. Ask questions. Go ask maybe to see someone else. Just do what you need to do. Get in touch with your leaders, and this is what I feel like I need help with. What can we do? And so that's what I really want people to do.
And if people want to know more, how do they contact you? How do they find you? Especially the intentional, oh, see, there it is, intentional leadership coach. Suppose people want to hire you or use you as
Yeah.
their intentional leadership coach.
Absolutely. So I will make sure I have the link to my page, the Intentional Literacy Coach. My email is tilcoachtj@gmail.com. That's one way to reach me. You can always email me and ask anything or get more information. I'm on Facebook as the Intentional Literacy Coach. I'm on LinkedIn as my name, Tanginia Jones. And also you can look up the Intentional Literacy Coach, Instagram, all the platforms as the Intentional Literacy Coach. And so that's how people can get my information. And just feel free to DM me or email me or anything, especially if you have more questions.
Well, thank you for being our guest today. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a plug for Transform Ed Consulting and the brains behind this whole operation, Cassandra Williams, who is the chief of Educational Innovation 360 Degrees. And you can find Cassandra or me on LinkedIn or Facebook or just plainly on the internet. Thank you again for being with me today, Tanginia, and it's a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, you too, ma'am.